What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Digital Mapmakers Academy. I'm Paul Postel, and today is part two as we continue our exploration of Photoshop with Kell of Kellerica Maps. Last week we wrapped up the conversation, and today Kell is going to demonstrate how you can use textures to color a map. Please note that Kell does not explain how to use Photoshop. This video does assume you have some prior knowledge of how to use Photoshop. However, if you do have a good grasp of layers and masks, you should be able to follow along without any problem. Let's get into it. What I'd like to do at this point is let's go ahead and go into our demonstration, but if you could do a quick setup for us, and what exactly are we going to be looking at in your demonstration today?
Right. So as we kind of previously discussed, I'm going to be focusing today on looking at texturing and coloring of maps, and specifically texturing and coloring of maps when you are kind of aiming for that kind of classic fantasy, antique parchment type of look that a lot of people seem to really enjoy.
Okay.
So I have prepared a small map of just a couple of islands, and it's now at a point where I'm done with the line work, and I've done some basic blocking of the basic base colors, and it's ready to get some color.
Okay.
And ready to get some texture. I'm gonna take it from there.
Okay, and then you had mentioned that also one of the reasons why you wanted to show this was because you've noticed that a lot of new map makers struggle with coloring and texturing. And
yes.
Yeah, and I struggle with the same thing as well. So I'm very interested to take a look at this. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen, and then we will jump into it. So Kell, you're going to do a demonstration of coloring, so I'm just going to go ahead and let you take it away.
I'm assuming you can see this. Yes. So this is kind of what my maps look like when they are, as I said, kind of ready for the first touches of color. So you can see that I've started by doing the line work, and I have just a couple of layers here with the different levels of line work. We have the I shot an line art for LA in my layer folders, and I've already kind of started separating my different layers into differently colored folders just to keep it to make it easier to keep track of them. So I have my basic line art, which is basically all of this, and then I have little ripples around the coastline, and I have actually set a color overlay style for them because I decided that I think in this particular map they look a bit better if they're white rather than the black that I originally made them in.
Okay.
And I generally just like to use color overlays because I find it makes it a bit easier to manipulate the colors of layers. And then I have my trees on a separate layer just because I usually tend to do trees are actually usually when I make my maps the very last thing that I add, because they are the thing that takes a long time, and more often than not they end up being in the way of different things like labels and such. So I've kind of just learned to basically get everything else down and then start adding trees, so I can avoid of having to like wasting an hour making an insane amount of forest and then having to delete half of them because I don't have room for the labels.
Gotcha.
Or something like that.
Okay.
And then kind of at the bottom, we do have just our basic my layer 0 that has the color. I've just given it a bit of a gray color, so it's a bit darker. The rest of them, and I've already also done some freehand brush work around the coastlines just to kind of make the coastlines pop a little. And then I have my land mask, which is just the color of the land mass. And I generally use a lot of masks when it comes to Photoshop, even sometimes when I probably wouldn't need to, but it's just kind of how I feel more comfortable working.
Okay.
So yeah, this is kind of what my map maps tend to look like at this stage. So there is no shading, but the line work is done, and there is just a little of rough color.
Okay.
And obviously I do still have the little city icons that I made as well. But yeah, so what I will do now is I'm gonna create a new folder, and I'm just gonna start placing some texture layers here. So I'm just gonna link some things, and this is a folder of my own textures that I've made. These have been just created using some coffee and tea and watercolors and things like that, and then a little bit of Photoshop. So I'm just going to use a couple of these today. And these can also be found on my website and free to download if anybody else wants to use them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this one. Just gonna put it in the folder I just made, and I'm gonna name that folder textures. Adjustments. And then I'm just gonna start to just reshape it. Sometimes I can just do basically just do this and call it done. But since these actually do have quite a bit of like stains that you can kind of see that they're getting a bit distorted if I just fill the space. So I'm just gonna pull them a little over the edges so the stains don't distort too much. And then comes the part where I start messing around with blending modes. Blending modes generally are your best friend when it comes to texturing, because this is the easiest way to make your textures see-through. So you can just let your line work and all of the other things that you already have on your map to kind of just shine through. And basically you can mess around with them as much as you like. There are very many different ones available. Generally, multiply tends to be my go-to when starting out. Multiply basically just makes all of your whites see-through. So pure white is completely see-through, and anything that's between black and white is the varying level. So it kind of just lets the things that you have underneath there just kind of shine through. I know that for some people they might just stop here. Like it already kind of does have a bit of a paper surface, but what I generally like to do is I actually like to stack a lot of different textures on top of a map. Sometimes I can go a bit overboard, and like a single map can have like 20 different textures on it, and I have to admit that that's a bit excessive. But at the very least, my maps usually have at least 3. So I think I'm gonna do it. Definitely gonna do 3 today. I'm gonna see if I want to add a bit more later on. So I think I'm just gonna take this one. This one I think should be fine just using as it is or not. And I'm gonna set it to multiply again. It's already bringing it a bit darker, and yeah, as you can see, this map is not very big, so can't zoom in that close. But I'm just gonna drop the opacity of this down. Let's say to 45% for now. And this is very much not an exact science. I just keep adding things and I keep tweaking them until I eventually kind of see something that I like. No 2 maps of mine are ever the same when it comes to how I've actually stacked the textures on it.
So here's a question for you. Can you adjust the opacity of 2 different textures that you put on there?
Yes, you can. Provided that they are from the. Obviously, now I can't adjust these 2 anymore because they are at different opacities.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, these are both at 100. If I choose both of these layers and just keep adjusting it does adjust both of them.
Okay, I see.
I like this one because I actually do really enjoy the like very clear coffee stains that you can see, like the little droplets here. So can be a bit distracting if you use it too strongly, but this is just, I just really like having little splashes of texturing like this. Maps, and just gonna again try to get the stains in a way that they don't get too distorted. So something like that. And could go with multiply again. I think I might go with slight overlay for this one, and I'm just gonna drop the opacity down because I don't want the stains to be too dominant, but I do kind of just want to be able to see them here. So I think I'm just gonna go do something like 20% of that.
Okay.
And as I said, like I could keep doing this. I often do, but for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just gonna leave it at 3 for now. So the next thing that I will do is I'm gonna put these into a little subfolder. I'm gonna call that textures. And then I'm gonna create a new folder called adjustments. And this is where I do start actually making use of Photoshop's excellent photo editing capabilities and actually make sure that my textures don't come off as too dark, or like it still doesn't like muddy the piece too much. Like I think this looks okay, but it is a bit dark, and it definitely can get even a bit darker.
Okay.
So, and it's maybe the colors are a bit saturated for my taste. So that's kind of what I'm gonna look at first. So I'm gonna choose my Photoshop's excellent color adjustment layer selection, and I'm gonna start with vibrance. Vibrance is a very good way of kind of turning the saturation just down a little. So as you can see, I can kind of like take the saturation of it down just a little bit. So I'm just gonna go with like something like -20 vibrance. And then I'm gonna do something to brighten the whole up a little. So I'm gonna go with curves. I'm just gonna bring the curve up a little, maybe give it a bit more contrast. It's obviously like this is very subjective. I tend to like very strong contrasts in general. Some people like it less so, and maybe with that I'm just gonna give it just a bit more of the. There we go. Okay. So that would be the first bits of adjustments, and then what I generally will like to do is adjust the land and sea colors individually. So once again, I'm going to create a new subfolder, and I'm going to call this one land. And I'm going to use the mask that I already have here. Just going to select this mask that I previously made, and I'm going to give that mask this folder. And then I am just going to think what I often like to do is I like to have my land on the maps be a bit lighter in tone than the sea. So I might just go for, say, levels. Just gonna bring that out a little bit. And I think maybe still I'll want to just adjust the vibrance a little bit again, so it's just not too saturated. I kind of just want to have a nice faded look. And yeah, I think it's already looking a lot better than it was. And if I want to, I might do the same thing for C. I'm gonna create a little, and obviously with this, if there is only one of these, I could just have the land mask be individually assigned to each one of these. But since if I do want to stack them up, it's just so much easier to have the folder be the one that has the mask, rather than be the each one of these individually. This is a lesson that I learned way too late. In the beginning, I used to have like 16 different adjustments that all had their own individual mask for the exact same area. But unfortunately, fortunately, I did wisen up eventually. So, you just pick up. So just gonna invert that selection and make this the C. And maybe use some levels again. I could maybe make the C just a little bit darker. And one thing that one filter that I really like to use is the photo filter that can be very useful for like adjusting tones.
Okay.
So I can, for instance, use something like this to kind of. Okay, that's actually very close to what I originally had, but yeah, that's to a point where it actually does basically do nothing. But if I wanted to, like, I don't know, just make the C actually blue,
oh wow,
or purple or something like that. It's like this can offer you very great flexibility in terms of color. But I think in this case it's actually not really doing much. So I think I might actually just leave it.
Okay.
Maybe leave it at this. I'm just gonna take a look and see if I do. And this is exactly the kind of thing where like there is a difference. I swear there's a difference. Like it's just I'm a nitpicker. Like I do so much of tiny little adjusting like this, and I swear to God I'm the only one who can actually tell the difference. But I still insist that this is time well spent and not wasted. There we go.
No, it's looking great.
Yeah. So this would be the first the first bits of texturing. I tend to find that texturing and coloring is something that I come back to tweak like as I go along, but I like to kind of do a bit of it now and then move on to something else and then kind of come back to it a bit later, because sometimes it is just easier to kind of see what it needs.
Thanks again to Kell for walking us through how to use textures to color a map. Don't forget to check the notes below for the link to download the textures that Kell used in his demonstration today. If you found this content helpful, please be sure to like this video and don't forget to click the dingy bell so you'll be notified whenever a new video is released. If you have a favorite map maker or perhaps a favorite map making application you'd like to be featured on the show, please let me know in a comment below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Mapmakers Academy.